Welcome back to the class, guys. So in this class you are going to learn how to configure a router. We are going to create a network with two routers, two switches and couple of computers so that you can send a ping message from one system to another system over network. The motive of this class is to make you familiar with the router and switches as well. So do you think that this class is very much important for you? Obviously yes. This is because if you are conducting a penetration testing in a corporate network, there are not only computers but networking devices like switches and routers also there. So you have to conduct a penetration testing on the routers and find the vulnerabilities in the routers that could do some damage to the network and patch them, of course, or do the proper configuration in order to secure the computer and secure the network as well. So how do you learn this router configuration? Do you need to buy these so-called expensive routers and switches? No, you don't need. You can simply download the tool called Cisco Packet Tracer, which I am going to show you, and you can install on your computer, where you can add virtual devices like routers, switches, firewalls, IP phones and so on. The job of the network administrator is to configure the router, set up the router in fact, and define the routing table, define the routing paths, and of course manage the router. And as a penetration tester, network penetration tester, your job is to find the vulnerabilities as said in the router. So what kind of threats, what kind of attacks could be conducted by the hacker on these routers? A DOS attack could be conducted, packet misreading attacks, PMAs, hit and run attacks, router table poisoning, persistent attacks and so on. We are going to learn about these attacks when we actually exploit the router in the upcoming classes. But for now, in order to understand a router, in order to conduct a penetration testing on router, you have to be familiar with the router commands just like your network administrator does. So let us start learning the router commands by configuring the router itself. Open your favorite browser and in the Google search engine and type download Cisco Packet Tracer. So you will be redirected to netacad.com. This is the first link, netacad.com, and from here you can download the Cisco Packet Tracer tool. Okay, you have to register and download the tool and then install the tool. So this is the interface of Cisco Packet Tracer. As said, this is a network simulation tool where you can actually create virtual routers, create virtual networks using networking devices like you can see over here. This is a networking devices under which you have lot of routers. So you can simply drag a router, put on the interface and configure this router. This is 2911 series router and this is some other router, and we have generic routers over here, different kinds of series routers, 1941 and so on. Other networking devices like you have computers, laptops. Down here you can see in the left down corner, keep concentrating on the mouse pointer. So you have PCs, laptops, servers, drag and drop, this is a server. And you have network controller, printers, IP phones, VoIP devices, TVs, tablets and so on. Let me slide this way. So we have generic wired devices, sniffers, network sniffers and so on. And we have network components. This is a components part, this is a connections part, and these are different kinds of connections. So this is automatically choose connection type, this is console port, this is copper straight through cable, this is crossover cable, fiber and so on, coaxial, serial and so on, octal. So again we have a miscellaneous, like we have these are all what I have selected earlier, and multi-user. So this is an advanced topic, multi-user. So simply you can drag and drop these devices over here like this. So let me delete all these 4 devices. So select a router, let me select 9211, 2911. So select the router and double click on it. Do you want to delete? No. So double click on it to open the router. So this router 3 and these are the router modules. So first you have to download and install the Cisco Packet Tracer. So now we will configure a single router, then we'll add another router, then we'll add switches to a network, then we will add systems to a network, so that you will understand how packet travels from one computer via switches and routers to the another PC. We'll do a ping test so that you will understand how a network function. But before that you have to understand physical ports on the router. As you know, there are two kinds of ports, physical ports and logical ports. Here we are talking about physical ports. As you can see in this image, these are two routers, 2811 series router, router 3 and router 4 are the names of the routers respectively, and we have two switches. and we have a couple of computers connected to switch number 0, switch name 0, and we have switch name 1, which has a printer, IP phone, laptop, and few computers. Routers are connected to each other, and router 3 is connected to a switch over here, and router 4 is connected to switch over here. So when routers are connected to switch, they use a LAN ports, and when routers are connected to each other, they use a WAN ports. So what I mean to say is there are 3 kinds of physical ports on a router. Any router, these are the basic ports that comes with the device. So these basic ports are of 3 kinds: LAN ports, WAN ports, and admin ports. LAN ports and WAN ports are responsible for receiving and sending the data over the networks, while the administrative ports or admin ports, auxiliary port and console port, are used for configuring the router. You can use these ports, administrative ports, for managing the router and configuring the router by giving the commands to the routers. And these commands you are going to learn for managing, configuring the routers in this class. And in order to do that, you have to plug your computer to this console port. So let me show you the ports, actual ports on the device itself. So in this network diagram, let me open this router. Let double click to open it, and this is a router name 4, router 4, and this is a router backside where you have to plug the cables to these ports. I know you cannot see, so let me magnify, let me zoom it. So as you can see over here, this is a device power on off switch. Now the device is on, as you can see the green LED light over here, and this is power off. So let it be the power off, and this is the power cord, so that you can give the power supply to this router device. And these are the ports that you can see over here. These are the empty slots. So before telling you about the ports, let me tell you there are 2 types of routers: fixed router and a modular router. Fixed routers are those routers in which ports comes at the manufacturing unit only. They cannot be removed by unscrewing the backside cards. The ports that are there on the router are fixed to the motherboard. They cannot be removed, or new ports or new cards cannot be added to those routers. They are called as fixed routers. But nowadays we are getting a modular routers. In modular routers, you have these empty slots where you can add these modules. Basically you call it cards, but in this application you call it modules. So you can simply drag and drop these modules to this router. So we have added fast Ethernet, as you can see over here. It is a link, fast Ethernet 10/TX. So let me remove it back again. So this is now an empty slot where we can add number of cards to this routing device. So as said, this is a power on off switch, power cord, and these are the ports. You can see this looks like RJ45 pin you often see on your laptop or PC, and even these are RJ45 pins. And these are administrative ports. These are admin ports. This is a console port where serial RJ45 cable is connected to this router device and then to your computer. Here you have RJ45 pin to connect, and the other end will be a serial cable that is connected to your laptop serial pin. And this is an auxiliary port. These 2 ports are administrative ports. When you buy a router for a first time, it is simply a hardware device. Nothing comes with the device. You have to configure the router according to the needs of your network. And as you can see over here, these are FE01 and FE02. I know you can hardly see, but this is the maximum what I can do, I guess. So let me do it, zoom to 300. Let me zoom to 400. So as you can see, FE01, fast Ethernet port 1 and fast Ethernet port 2, and optional RPS inputs, and these are USB ports. So where are LAN ports and WAN ports? We have LAN ports over here, fast Ethernet, but we need to add modules to this router. So let me go to the modules. Say for example, we have to add a serial port. So details of this module is given down at the bottom of this application. So the Duo serial port WAN interface card features Cisco new compact high density smart serial connector, supports wide variety of electrical interfaces used to, and so on. You can read the details of each and every module if you are interested. So but let me add one of the modules to this router. Add WIC2T to this interface. This is not compatible. No, this should be compatible to this slot. Yes, to this slot this is compatible, and let me magnify again. So we have serial 1 and serial 2. This is I think 26 pin, I guess. For earlier routers there were 60 pin serial cables, but nowadays we are getting 26 smart serial cables that you can actually connect to other routers, as this is a WAN interface. And if you come over here, so this is a network module with 4 Ethernet ports. So let me add over here, and if I magnify again, so Ethernet 1, Ethernet 2, Ethernet 3 and Ethernet 0. So these are the LAN ports that you can actually connect to your switches, and these are the WAN ports that you can actually connect to the routers for WAN connectivity, that is for external networks. And these are fast Ethernet ports. You can actually add Giga Ethernet ports, but I don't think this device supports Giga Ethernet. So as you can see, these are administrative ports, WAN ports, and here are the LAN ports. So guys, now this is a fresh interface, a blank space where you don't find any networking devices. So let me pull in some router over here. Select any router, like say for example 9241. Click on the router. You can see the red mark over here, and just click on the blank space to add the router, or you can simply drag and drop. Okay, so let me remove this device, delete. So as you can see, we have a router over here, and the display name of this router, not a router's host name, it is a display name of the router, is router 0. If I double click, you will see the router 0, it is a display name. And you have 4 tabs over here: physical tab that you have been already introduced to a while ago, config tab, CLI and attributes. So now let me zoom this view. Now the device is actually powered on. You can see over here there is a green LED that's glowing. Let me power off this switch, and again let me power on. Now if I go to the config tab, you see that the device is still booting. Please wait until it is finished. Let me click OK. Now come to the CLI part. So device is still booting, and as you know, when you power on your computer, PC or a laptop, or even your Android or iOS phones, these devices boots because they have operating system in it. Similarly, routers or switches have operating system. They are called as inter-networking operating system. So iOS is Cisco's proprietary inter-networking operating system. It is a package of routing, switching and inter-networking capabilities. Now this is a place where you will actually configure your router from this interface. Would you like to enter initial configuration dialog? No, I don't want to enter into the initial configuration dialog, so I will write no and hit enter. Again enter, and as you can see over here, router and right arrow, and this is a prompt. Like when you open your Windows command prompt, you will see a command prompt in the terminal. Similarly, in the routers you have prompts, but it depends upon the modes of the router. So router has different modes in which you have to work in order to configure the router or manage the router. So there are 4 different types of modes. So let me go back to the slide. So as you can see the slide, you have tabs: modes, access method or command, prompt and exit method. So I'm going to introduce you to different modes of the router and how to get into that mode using the commands, and that is the access method. And when you type and hit the command, you will be entering into particular mode that depends upon what type of command you have fired. So let us begin now. When you power on and boot the router, you will be in a user execution mode. And in order to enter into user execution mode after it is configured, you need to log in using your credentials, and you will enter into a router prompt with a router and forward arrow. And if you want to get out of this user execution mode, you have to type the command at router prompt as logout, and here in order to enter from user execution mode to privilege mode, you have to type enable as a command and hit enter. So now you will move from user execution mode to a privilege mode. When you are in a user mode or execution mode, you have only limited commands for monitoring purpose only. But when you move from user execution mode to privilege mode, here you can actually view and change the configuration of the router. And in this mode you can run commands like show running configuration, you can see all the show commands like show clock, show host, show history, show IP interface brief, and you can use this privilege mode for troubleshooting purpose. When you are in a user execution mode and if you type enable command, you will reach to privilege mode as said, and at privilege mode the prompt will change from router forward arrow to router hash, as you can see on the screen over here. And in order to get out of privilege mode to user execution mode, you will type command disable. And when you are in a privilege mode and if you type configure terminal, you will reach to a global configuration mode, and in a global configuration mode the prompt will change to router in a brackets config and hash. So it means that you are in a global configuration mode, and in a global configuration mode the commands that you use in this mode will affect the running configuration of the router. So commands like making a local database, creating usernames, passwords, etc. can be done in the global configuration mode. And in order to get back to privilege mode from global configuration mode, you will execute command exit, exit at the prompt. Next you have interface mode. In the interface mode you will configure the interfaces. As you know, router has interfaces and a network traffic is routed through these interfaces to different networks. So you have to move to the interface mode in order to configure or assign IP to that particular interface. And in order to move to interface mode, you have to type the command like interface and name of the interface. Then you will reach into the interface mode, and now you can work on the interfaces. And to get out of the interface mode, the command is again exit, exit. And finally ROM-on mode. It is a software package or application that initializes the Cisco hardware and boots the system. Now you have to learn different commands. It is like command line tutorial. So as you can see on the screen, enable is a command used to enter into a privilege mode. Config terminal or configure terminal is a command that is used to enter into the global configuration mode. And once you are in a privilege mode, you can execute show commands like show flash, show version, show history, show users, show hosts, and so on. So these are all the show commands that you can use in privilege mode, and each command has its own function. Like if you type show history, it will show all the commands that were executed earlier. Hostname is a command that is used to name the router and Cisco switches as well. So if you type hostname and the name, your Cisco device, whether router or switch, will be renamed to the name that you have specified. In a packet tracer, hostname and display names are different. Next you have enable password, and it configures the password for enable, that is when you actually boots and you want to get into the user execution mode, then you have to give the password. Enable secret grants privileged access, administrative accesses. Then service password encryption, it sets weak password encryption. As you know, router has console port and auxiliary ports, admin ports. So you have to plug a cable, serial cables, into these console ports and auxiliary ports in order to manage or configure the router. So in order to enter the line mode, that is either line console 0 or auxiliary 0, you will use command line console 0 and line aux 0, and you have to be in a global configuration mode. Then line VTY 0 to 4. Sometimes you may be out of office and you have to work from a remote location. Then you can connect to your router via telnet or SSH. And in order to configure that, you will enable line modes, that is virtual telnet lines. And you can configure these virtual telnet lines through 0 to 4 using the command line VTY 0 to 4. And when you are in a line modes, that is either aux 0 or console 0 or VTI 0, your command prompt will change from router config to router config -line and bracket closed hash, as you can see on the screen over here. Now you are in a line mode and you can give a passwords for that line for a security purpose, because no one can just come into the networking room, plug a cable, plug a laptop and just configure because he has some skills. That is not allowed, right? So these lines are secured using the passwords. So if you want to work on a console line or auxiliary line or a VTI line, you have to first specify the passwords. Then you are allowed into a config line mode. And once you are in a global configuration mode, if you issue a command interface fast ethernet 0, these command internet fast ethernet 0 by 1 or 0 by 0, interface giga ethernet 0 by 1 or 0 by 0, or interface ethernet, and so on. There are different kinds of ethernet ports, right? Ethernet, fast ethernet and giga ethernet. So if you want to move to that specific interface, you have to type the command interface type and the name. So that moves to interface configuration mode. Once you are in a interface configuration mode, your prompt changes from router config to router config -if. And once you are in a interface configuration mode, you can assign IP addresses to that interfaces. Like as an example, you are seeing over here IP address 192.168.10.2, and you must also specify the subnet mask to that interface. And once you are in an interface and you have assigned the IP address, you have to issue the command no shutdown. Shutdown means close, no shutdown means turn on the interface. And once you are in a privilege mode, you have to save, you have to come back to the privilege mode and you have to save the work you have done by issuing the command copy running config startup config. This saves the running configuration to the NVRAM. So these are only few basic commands that you have seen over here, but once we actually start working on configuring the router, you can see a lot of commands, and I strongly suggest you to at least do CCNA course in order to understand how routers and switches function. So now let us go back to the Cisco Packet Tracer and start working on the routers and switches. So guys, as you can see, this is the network diagram. This is the main router, a Hyderabad router, which we are going to configure, and it has 3 switches connected to its LAN interfaces and 2 routers connected to WAN interfaces. Moscow router is connected to one serial interface and Dubai router is connected to another serial interface, and which has again a single switches for its local network, having 2 computers to the switch number 3, having 2 computers to switch number 4 of Moscow, and we have 3 switches. For example, this is HR department, this is IT department, and this is finance department. Now we will ping from 172.16.10.2 PC2 that of now 192.168.10.3, and how the network is formed, how routers are configured, how switches behave, we will see in the next class. So we are going to create this network from the scratch so that you will learn how to configure a router and how network actually functions. So that's it in this class, guys. Looking forward to join you in the next class. Have a great day. Thank you for watching the video, and do subscribe to the YouTube channel INSECTECHS.